A happy new year to all of you. Do you have a new year resolution? Have you thought of one yet? Well, I have, and I'll tell you all about it in some time. Let's first talk about yours. Is your new year resolution to get fit? You'll then have to wait for the Wuhan virus pandemic to end. How else will you go out for a run? Is your new year resolution to save money? You will have to wait for the pandemic to end again. How else will the economy recover? How else will your salary or your business grow? Is your new year resolution to travel? You will have to wait for the travel bans to end. How else will you get there? Is your new year resolution to have a family? Well, there's the Wuhan virus in the air. Welcome to 2021. We are still in the middle of a pandemic. It has taken an entire year from our lives. It has taken our jobs, our loved ones. The virus from Wuhan is not done yet. There is a new strain now. So the world is on repeat mode. Infections, lockdowns, pain. Who bears the cost of this? Hello and welcome to Gravitas Plus. I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay. 1945 to 1962, the US government conducted 200 nuclear tests. They were in Nevada, Arizona, Washington and New Mexico. The radiation killed over 400,000 people. The US government had to compensate. Nearly $100,000 were paid to each family. 1984, the Bhopal gas tragedy. Around 20,000 people died, 500,000 survived with respiratory and eye problems. The Union Carbide Corporation had to cough up $470 million. 1986, the Chernobyl nuclear plant disaster. 350,000 people were affected. The Soviet Union paid $1.12 billion in compensation. 1989, Exxon Valdez oil tanker spill. Exxon spent $3.8 billion on the cleanup, and it was slapped with a $5 billion bill in punitive damages. 2010, Deepwater Horizon oil spill, the largest oil spill in history. An estimated 206 million gallons of oil spilled in the Gulf of Mexico. 11 people died, 17 were injured. Oil company BP was made to pay $65 billion. 2020 Beirut blast, 204 people dead, more than 6,500 injured. Lebanon Prime Minister had to step down. The investigation is on. 2020, the Wuhan virus pandemic, nearly 2 million deaths and 83 million infections. Why is China not being made to pay? For every man-made disaster in history, the perpetrators have had to compensate. Why should the Wuhan virus pandemic be an exception? This is the greatest economic blow since the Great Depression, the biggest crisis of our generation. 24 million students are out of school for good. 400 million jobs have been lost so far, 89 million in South Asia alone, 45 million in Africa, 34 million in Latin America. Recession has hit all 5 continents. 26% of the world's businesses were closed at some point or the other. Around 100,000 businesses have shut shop in the United States alone, and that's just according to one estimate. The University of California, Santa Cruz, for example, says 317,000 American businesses were closed down between February and September 2020. That's 1,500 closures per day, 1,500 per day. Look at insolvencies. An increase of 57% in North America, 34% in Eastern Europe, 32% in Western Europe, 33% in Latin America, and 31% in Asia. Let me give you a glimpse of the companies that have filed for bankruptcy. Gold's Gym, the parent company of Wendy's and Pizza Hut. Aldo, Brooks Brothers, Muji, JC Penney, J. Crew, Le Pain Quotidien, California Pizza Kitchen, Flybe Airlines, Virgin Atlantic, LATAM Airlines, Thai Airways, Nok Airlines, Air Deccan, Blue Air, Air Mauritius, Level Europe. This is what apocalypse looks like. Who bears the cost? What should the world's New Year resolution be? Make China pay. Hold it accountable. Where do you start? Well, right here. Let's begin by looking at the amount that China should be made to pay. $16 trillion. That's how much the Wuhan virus has reportedly cost us in 2020. 16 trillion. That's the economic cost alone. The travel and tourism industry, for example, shrunk by 42.1%. Europe was the most impacted in this sector. The number of flights scheduled worldwide was down by more than 40% as of December 2020. In February 2020, it was down by more than 70% year on year. Passenger aviation is estimated to have lost $314 billion last year. The aviation industry is down to its knees. Global trade is no different. It declined around 9.2% annually. The food and beverage industry suffered a 22% loss in turnover globally. Automobile around 20%. If you're watching us from West Asia, you must know that the region lost nearly $270 billion worth of oil income. $270 billion. All because of the Wuhan virus pandemic. India is expected to be the worst affected among the major world economies. The lockdown alone cost India $26 billion. A report by Oxford Economics claims India's annual output would be 12% below pre-virus levels through 2025. All of this because of the Wuhan virus pandemic. Who will bear this cost? Europe is expected to shrink by more than 7%. Spain and the United Kingdom are likely to be the worst affected in this region. Their GDP decline more than 12% and 10% respectively. Now look at what the pandemic has done to the United States. In the second quarter of 2020, America's GDP fell 32.4%. 32.4. Numbers not seen since the Great Depression. Unemployment hit 14.7%. The highest since the Second World War. Do you know countries had to compensate for that war too? The United States, for example, had to pay $20,000 to each surviving Japanese detainee. Japan had to pay $6.67 million in compensation to former prisoners of war. Germany was billed around $38.6 billion. Italy had to pay $360 million. Finland, $300 million, Hungary, $300 million, Romania, $300 million, Bulgaria, $70 million. Why then are world leaders so scared of billing China for the pandemic? The virus pushed Australia to its sharpest dive since the Great Depression. In June 2020, Australia's economy shrank 7%. Australia entered recession for the first time in 28 years. Indonesia entered recession for the first time in 22 years. It was the first time in history for India too. Germany, the United Kingdom, Japan, South Korea, United States, Brazil, Singapore, Thailand. The pandemic pushed all of these countries into recession. Who is responsible for this? China. $16 trillion worth of loss. Dear leaders, bill it to China. Address your bills to this man. Make China pay. And for starters, stop paying China. Europe lost nearly 480,000 people to the Wuhan virus. It is now signing investment treaties with China. Bahrain lost more than 350 people to the virus. At least 90,000 were infected. Guess what it's doing? Bahrain is thanking Beijing by buying the Chinese vaccine. So is the United Arab Emirates, Morocco, Turkey, Indonesia, Brazil. Why is the world still doing business with China? And if China were really sorry, why isn't it offering to bear the cost of global vaccination to start with? Look at what China is doing instead. It first pushed economies into recession, and now it is profiteering by selling them medical kits and vaccines. Brazil, for example, has already been billed $90 million for the initial 46 million doses of the Chinese vaccine, a classic case of the perpetrator emerging victorious. In 2021, let's boycott China. Let's rethink global supply chains. Do it for the families who lost their loved ones, for the batch of 2020 that never graduated, the healthcare workers who will never come back home, for our resolutions of 2020 that never saw the light of day. This year, make China pay.
Gravitas Plus, co-presented by Skoda. Simply clever.